I'm making the point that neither Starmer or Sunak are particularly different from each other.
Except as leaders.
You talk about bullying before. John Prescott had 14 cases of bullying raised against him. So did Gordon Brown had cases of bullying raised against him. But they operated the government, and John Prescott was seen as a necessary key cog in that Labour government to keep various elements on side for Tony Blair and Gordon Brown.
Well, that would work as a parallel with Dominic Raab, but not with Nadeem Zahawi.
Well,
you're going back a decade and a half. No, Priti Patel was found by an independent inquiry by the ministerial advisor to be a bully, and thousands of pounds was paid out in compensation to her victim. And the independent advisor, resigned when Boris Johnson failed to act. So you can't offer up John Prescott or Gordon Brown as, with respect, as a sort of flimsy parallel for that ugly saga, but neither can you offer up anything to do with bullying in the context of why Sunak didn't act sooner with Nadeem Zahawi.
Well, the point I was making is a wider point, I think.
Then let's draw it back to the current Labour Party, shall we? Rather than go back a decade and a half in desperate search for a fig leaf, and let's look at what Keir Starmer does with allegations. The last leader of the Labour Party is no longer in the Parliamentary Labour Party, and the former Chief Whip, Nick Brown, who faces allegations I don't know about, I don't know any detail about them, but the minute they were raised and an inquiry was launched, the whip was removed. So compare like with like, Leon. Compare 2023 with 2023. Not with 2007.
Well, fair enough. Like I said, I was just because you raised bullying with Priti Patel, I noticed the parallel. But sticking to 2023, I mean, the government is under the scrutiny that will, in theory, pick up every matter of concern for the public. We don't know that the Labour Party.
You're not addressing the simple question of the world, and his wife knew that Nadeem Zahawi was banged to rights. And let's be generous and give you the middle of last week as an obvious threshold for that realisation. He thought he could get away with it because of what Cummings had got away with, and because of what Patel had got away with, and because of what Braverman had got away with, and because of what, more than any of them, Johnson had got away with again and again and again and again. So the question, and just to clarify, is why has Sunak failed so completely to distance himself from the depravity of that era?
Well, I think that Sunak made the decision that waiting the extra 5 days for this
then I'd say, why give Suella Braverman her job back then? For the same offence?
Well, it's not the same offence. The Suella Braverman
breaching the ministerial code. It's the same offence.
Well, he gave her a job back because he felt that he needed her support, and he needed the support around her to stay within power. He made
more than he needed to detach himself from the depravity of the previous era.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
yes.
I agree with you.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that at all.
There it is. So prioritising, I don't know, political self-advancement above morality, integrity, professionalism, and accountability.
But that's what every politician does,
Except
surely.
It isn't, is it, as we've just proved? That's why you have to go back to the middle of the 90s to come up with a fairly half-assed comparison. And you've got Nick Brown, who's currently suspended, and the last leader of the Labour Party, who's not even in the parliamentary party anymore.
But didn't Keir Starmer sit beside Jeremy Corbyn throughout all his scandals without raising a voice until he was kicked out?
He wasn't leader of the Labour Party, Leon.
But he could have left the party.
So now you're comparing a shadow Brexit secretary with a Prime Minister.
Well,
and also, this is why Sunak stayed with Johnson, isn't it? Because it's better to be inside the tent weeing out than it is to be outside the tent weeing in. So by all means, use Starmer in this way, but all you do is remind us of how long Rishi Sunak sat in the house next door to Boris Johnson. Not just a few seats down on the Labour front bench, mate. But have another crack if you want, because I'm enjoying your acrobatics.
I'm making the point that neither Starmer or Sunak are particularly different from each other.
Except as leaders.
Well,
as leader, what would you point to in Starmer's conduct that you think stands comparison with Sunak's craven conduct?
Well, he's not in government, so he hasn't had
No, he wasn't in government when he was sitting next to Jeremy Corbyn, mate, but you were playing that card 5 minutes ago. So as leader, what would you point at?
I don't know.
You just said they were the same. You said it live on national radio, so back it up.
I made the point that if it was about morality, Starmer could have walked out of the party.
As leader. You said as leader, they're the same. So give me an example of Starmer as leader.
I said as politicians.
No, you didn't. You said as leaders. What have you got?
That's not what I said, James. I said as politicians, they're the same.
So we're talking about Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, and you're talking about Keir Starmer as Shadow Brexit Secretary. Just out of interest, before the news, can you think of any example at all from Keir Starmer's tenure as Labour leader that does speak of a sort of absence of professionalism, accountability and integrity comparable to Sunak's conduct over the last week?
I don't know of any levels of scandals.
10:32 is the time.